Well, welcome everybody to our webinar today. I am super excited for today to learn more about Compost Colorado. My name is Barb Howe, and I do business development here for Colorado Proud. I'm just going to share a couple things before I turn it over to our expert. Our webinar today, we've got Noah Kaplan. He is the Director of Composting and Sustainability with Compost Colorado. This is his email, and this is their website. So you can always reach out to them afterwards if you have any questions or would like to connect. And I just ask that, while he's presenting, if we can just mute our microphones, it does help eliminate any background noise. We want questions. We highly encourage them. Feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat and we'll make sure it's addressed. And of course, I'm sure Noah will stop along the way and ask for questions, but just, feel free. We would love to engage with you. And if you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to email me. This is my email address, barb.howe@state.co.us. Well, I'm excited. I love learning about companies that are doing these amazing things in our state. But first, let me introduce our guest today. Noah directs Compost Colorado, and he is responsible for the organic waste diversion and sustainability programs run by Compost Colorado across the Denver metro area. These folks are helping local schools, businesses, and residents close their waste loop. Under his leadership, Compost Colorado diverts over 6 million pounds of organic waste annually and operates Denver's only commercial composting facility. I love that. I love everything about that. We all need to do more. So I'm so glad you've joined us, and I turn it over to you. I can't wait to learn more.
All right. Thank you so much, Barb, and really a pleasure to be here sharing a bit of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm just going to get our slides loaded up and together here. How's that looking? That going to work? Okay.
Looks great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and please jump in with any questions or curiosities as we make our way through the presentations. I'm going to talk a little bit about composting more broadly, and then why it is such an important thing for us to participate in, before getting into a little bit how you as an individual and a business can contribute to the things that composting provides us all the opportunity to participate in. A little bit of background on me. I used to be a high school teacher in a past life. So this is a photo of me from a little earlier in my 20s when I started as an educator at East High School, and got to spend some time with young folks and got to learn a little bit more about what it is that's on their minds as they get older and as they think about the types of impacts they'd like to have on the world, right? And I think a good way of us thinking about how we should run our businesses and how we should contribute to the things we participate in is, how is this going to be impactful in positive and or negative ways for the next generation, right? I think we all have that in mind as we think about our contributions. And one of the things that I like to do when I was in the classroom was we would do these, I ran a little bit of a speech and debate program, so that afforded us the chance to check in, like, what are we thinking about? What are we wanting to advocate for? How do we want to understand the challenges that might be facing us as we get a bit older? And what you learn is that kids as adults are all thinking, processing our relationship to nature, right? This is something we're all thinking about. What does it look like for us as individuals and groups to be doing some correction on our relationship to our natural resources and to nature more broadly? And what you find when you do this exploration with young folks is they look up at a certain point, they say, I get all of the impacts of some of the things that we have going on, climate change, greenhouse gases, these kinds of things. But what is it that anybody's doing about it? And that is a really exciting opportunity for an educator to give some empowerment, right? So from that moment, we are able to then jump into, okay, well, what is it that people are doing about it? And what is it that we can do as a community or as individuals? And what you'll find is that composting is the easiest and most impactful thing that you can do as an individual or a group to combat climate change and build a more resilient local ecosystem. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why that is. And we like to start with this Paul Harvey quote from he's a radio broadcaster. Some of you may be familiar with him. Despite all of our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. These are the things that make all the other things we might enjoy and love possible. So that's a good reminder, right? The rain and the water is something that basically takes care of itself, and the soil is something that requires our stewardship. And nature has, for a very, very long time, done a lot of organics recycling, right? Everything that grows, everything that lives, everything that nature produces. There is no waste. Waste is an idea that we as a human society have really come up with. It's a term that doesn't exist in nature because waste is really a misnomer. Waste is a resource that's been misplaced, and composting is about reclaiming those resources. So what is composting? And I would be psyched if we had some participation here. I won't pressure us too much. I know it's not easy to do on a Zoom call. But if anybody wants to jump in, I'm going to give you just a couple seconds here to raise your hand or unmute. Otherwise, I'll just roll right through. Anybody got a comment?
Laurel or David? For me, it's a way to utilize things that maybe we haven't consumed,
Yes.
and trying to build a very nutrient dense soil, for lack of a better term. But
That's right. That's exactly right. It is it's organics recycling. So composting is the process that generally when we talk about it, we're talking about the process that's kind of human initiated. It's the process organic material goes through as it breaks down into nutrient rich soils, fertilizers, and mulch. We make compost with food scraps, yard waste, and biodegradable paper products, things like cardboard, things like compostable substitutes, tissue paper, paper towels, these things that are made of organic, once living things, not minerals, not sand, but things that actually had some biology and life in them at some point, then end up mixed with oxygen and moisture. So when you mix these things together with the right proportions of oxygen and water, a really magical thing happens. You start to see this chemical and biological reaction occur. A microbiome, a whole universe of bacteria and fungi start to flourish, and it starts to break that stuff down from the inside out. And that breaking of that stuff down from the inside out produces heat, and that heat contributes to the decomposition of this material. And you're taking things that are once complex, big structures, compounds, and you're breaking them down into simple nutrients at an elemental level that then are accessible to plants and then provide us access to those nutrients in the form of food. And so all living things depend on this process. There's a composting process in every ecosystem that you can imagine where things are being broken down to be then reused. So the circle of all things is very important here, right? Nature loves cycles. It doesn't like lines. Human society at this phase of the game has certainly created a lot of linear systems as opposed to circular systems. And our waste system is one of particular concern. We produce a massive amount of food and other organic products that we then use in our societies. And a lot of that stuff ends up in the trash. Nearly 40% of the food that we produce in this country is thrown away. That means for every bite of food you take, another bite is thrown into a trash can. When you account for all of the paper products and other compostable items we interact with regularly, you're looking about over 50% of the stuff sitting in our landfills is organic material. And that causes a problem. Let's see who was paying attention. If I throw organic material into a landfill, into a plastic bag, and then bury it beneath a bunch of other non-porous material, which essential ingredient to the composting process is not available to that material.
Sunshine, oxygen.
Sunshine. That's right. Oxygen is going to be the big winner there. So oxygen is no longer available to that process. And remember, the essential ingredients are carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. If you don't have oxygen, this material rots in an anaerobic state and it produces methane gas. That methane gas then seeps into our environment and into our atmosphere, producing a massive warming effect. So, a huge percentage of the greenhouse gas that we produce as a society is from this slow seep of methane from our landfills. The Washington Post reported several years ago that the organic material rotting in our landfills produces more greenhouse gas emissions than our airline industry. So you can imagine just how much methane, the heat maps of society, looking at greenhouse gas emissions are really white hot over our landfills. So it's really important for us to think about this particular system. And there's a lot of reasons why. So now let's chat through the power of composting and what it has the potential to do for us and our communities. To start, we know that if we're champions of the environment, if we're stewards of nature's resources, we have to stop this methane seep. We got to make sure that our organic material is ending up in an aerobic environment that it can break down naturally and with the right amount of oxygen, reducing the amount of those greenhouse gases. So your landfill emissions is number one. Let's reduce. That's when we say combat climate change. We're talking about that methane reduction is first and foremost. The other exciting thing about compost is it is mostly a carbon material. So carbon is a very plentiful element in our on our planet. And it is in many ways, we are carbon-based life forms, right? And we have a lot of great use for carbon. Carbon is the building blocks for much of what we enjoy and many, many parts of our bodies and many, many functions that are necessary for life. And it just becomes a big problem when it turns into gas and it ends up in high percentage in our atmosphere. So when you compost, you actually are trapping carbon in a physical state that makes it useful to plants, animals, insects, bacteria, and it sequesters that carbon. And then you grow things, a living soil, an ecosystem of carbon that then facilitates life is going to also bring carbon out of the atmosphere and pack it into the ground. Plants and animals growing in living soil are going to also be trapping carbon. So there's all these really fantastic documentaries. I encourage you to see Kiss the Ground. I encourage you to look into the Carbon Cowboys. These are folks practicing regenerative agriculture who understand that the more we trap that carbon into the ground, the more regenerative our practice can be. And it has all these auxiliary benefits. And first and foremost is this carbon sequestration. There's a lot of really wonderful studies that suggest if we were to do this type of practice on tens of hundreds of thousands of millions of acres of land across our country and the world, we would get to see a massive reversal of some of the more dangerous and damaging impacts of climate change. So this is not a small thing. This is a big thing, and it's something that you can do with a lot of really small action. So how cool is that? We also know that spreading soil leads to healthier ecosystems. You make compost, you spread that in your yard or in your garden, and you're going to do a lot of wonderful things for that. Those of us in Colorado understand the preciousness of water, and spreading compost is about producing a layering sponge, which then absorbs moisture and traps it, insulates it into the ground. So when it rains, we have pretty degraded soil in Colorado. It's a very clay heavy soil. And if you can imagine a bunch of water dumping onto a clay substrate, it's going to stay on that surface, right? So that water is not actually going to be absorbed into the ground. And then the sun comes out and we're a mile high up and we don't have a high humidity percentage. And that means that moisture is pulled out of the earth really, really fast. And you can notice this and do your own experiments by dumping water onto asphalt or water onto clay soil or water onto some kind of degraded, square of, dirt that they plant these trees in, up and down Colfax or other urban areas. That moisture leaves very, very quickly. You spread soil like this, you spread compost, living soil, it's going to soak up that moisture and trap it into the ground. You're also going to see it repair degraded and polluted ecosystems as you add compost. It breaks down further some of the things that might be dangerous to us. It turns potentially volatile things into inert things. So chemicals and toxins in the earth can actually be processed through a composting experience, and that's a really, really cool benefit. You're also going to dilute other toxins or heavy metals that don't break all the way down or maintain some threat to us in their kind of most elemental state. You're going to dilute those things and make it much safer for us to grow food out of those places and play in those places, and you just build a healthier ecosystem overall. But the big thing I want to stress here is the drought resiliency piece. Compost and spreading it regularly reduces the amount of watering you may need to do to a yard or to a garden by half. So imagine you have to use half as much of that precious resource, and how good that would be for everybody if we all did it. You also fight the heat trapping effect. We know in Denver and in urban areas, it's regularly 10 to 15 degrees hotter in those areas than elsewhere or in adjacent, more rural spaces. And that is a problem. You got a lot of asphalt, steel, concrete. These things radiate heat, they trap heat, and compost is a way of reducing and preventing that or minimizing the effect of that heat trapping that occurs in urban areas. The more vines you grow, the more tree canopies you grow, the healthier parks you have. All of that is going to contribute to a more comfortable and a more livable environment for cities into the future. So all of that is really, really important, really good stuff, and stuff that generally we can all agree on, which is nice to have. Isn't it cool in a time where we can have a lot of disagreements with our neighbors about a lot of different things? This is something that really transcends our politics or a rural-urban divide. Composting is something we all benefit from, and the more things we have of that nature, the better. Talk a little bit about what we can and can't compost here. Oh, and here's a little video. I think this makes sense to share. This is of Denver's only and first commercial composting facility. So give you a little bit of a sense of what it looks like for us to process this material. So it gives a little showcase of the work that we're doing and what it looks like. This is a specific feature of our collaboration with the City Park Farmers Market, where we accept compostable single-use items, and we process that stuff into a nutrient-rich soil product. And but you'll also get a glimpse into the rest of the process.
All right, here we are back at Cocoa. After our farmers market run, we got some awesome BPI certified compostables here. It's going to make for a great carbon amendment to a really high quality compost. Get them up there on the sorting table, make sure we got nothing we don't need. And this is a great example here of what we're looking at the end of a farmer's market. We've got a lot of really wonderful compostable items, stuff that's going to work really well as a carbon substitute. And we've got some not so great things. This is why it's important for us to stay really, really conscious of what we're throwing in the compost bin, right? It's important that we're not putting anything that isn't BPI certified. And you're going to notice the BPI certifications have a really obvious stamp on them. This is how we make sure that everything that goes into our soil is going to be BPI certified. It's going to be a really nice carbon substitute. And you'll see what it becomes is this fantastic, really confetti-like carbon substitute. But this is how we're able to process this material safely and to produce something that is going to be really, really great for yards and gardens. And next, we're going to see where this material goes and how we actually turn it back into earth. And Alex is going to take you over there and show you what's up.
So now for the fun part. This is where we process your materials and turn it into soil. You're about to watch a chef cook. We have our ingredients here. We have some yard debris, some wood chips, coffee grounds, food scraps. Food scraps have a lot of moisture in them already, so we need to mix it with some dry, carbon-heavy materials, which we happen to have thanks to the farmer's market. We have layers of different materials, which is a nice start, but we have to mix it all together so that the microbes have access to all these different ingredients at the same time. So as the microbes reproduce, they let off heat. All that heat builds up inside here, and as we turn it, we're aerating it, and the steam is released. Here's a batch we made a couple weeks ago. It's ready to get reinvigorated, but check this out. Wow, that's hot, which means life is happening. What we're doing here is keeping things out of the landfill because it makes no sense to put these valuable resources into a landfill. Waste is a mindset, and here at Compost Colorado, we see resources.
When you lay finished compost in your yard or in your garden, you turn your home into a site for carbon capture. We've broken so much of our economy and our food system, creating this line between production and landfill, and this is how we start to repair that, turning it into a circle. And you can be a part of a complete loop close by laying this compost right in your yard and in your garden. And we'll see you next week.
All right. So that is a little bit of a glimpse at these facilities and what they look like. Yeah, and that's how the magic is made. A little bit more on food scraps here, or what is compostable and what isn't. We'll run through this fairly quickly. And then get to maybe some questions or some of the other details that are ways you can engage in a composting program in your communities and in your homes. So food scraps, pretty straightforward. Anything that grew out of the ground, anything that came from something you ate, you can compost. Common mistakes are to leave your produce stickers on those places, twist ties, rubber bands, bindings. These are things that are generally made out of material you don't want in your garden, and therefore we don't want it in our compost. So there's lots of this creates a lot of opportunity. Pits, bones, cheeses, shells, skins, all that stuff can go. And in a system that gets as hot as the one that Alex just showed you in that video, you're looking at 150 to 160 degrees during the thermophilic phase of the composting process. That's hot. That's hot over. And imagine cooking anything at that temperature for weeks on end. That's going to break down fairly quickly and fairly thoroughly.
Pardon me real quick. Your
Yes.
video is still up. Did you want to put up a slide with kind of what we can compost and what we can't? Beautiful. Love that.
Slide
Yep, perfect.
should be working here.
There, I see it now. Perfect.
Okay, good. Let's see. Let me make sure. Back to this slideshow. Can you see the slide now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. All right, we're rolling through. This is what I was showing you before. Thank you for getting that cleaned up. Yeah, okay, good. So now let's talk about food soiled paper. We can accept food soiled paper. Paper is a organic material made from plants. We usually focus mostly on food soiled paper. So we're looking at paper towels, napkins, cardboard. These kinds of things are generally really good for composting, but obviously paper is a really great product to recycle. So we recommend recycling paper that doesn't have food soil on it, and then composting paper that has food soil on it. So if you're cleaning up a mess, if you had pizza and it's all over the cardboard, you may not want to recycle that stuff, but otherwise you can handle it in the composting process. The challenge is we like to put a lot of crap on paper. We like to put plastic liners, we like to put films, we like to put PFAS on paper, those forever chemicals. These are all things that help create some hydrophobia. Plastic is just a fancy way of keeping moisture in or out, generally speaking. Moisture and oxygen, it's a barrier that gets created that is really hard to degrade. And in a composting process, we want our barriers to degrade. We want everything to be able to break down. So we don't want things that are lined in plastic. We don't want things that have additional chemicals that reduce the porosity of this material. That's the stuff that makes it all possible. All right. Any questions on paper? Usually there are some questions on paper.
I have a question that in the video it said something like only VPI certified materials, but I don't know if I even got the letters right.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it segues really nicely into the next piece of this. Paper products are generally good, but when we're talking about compostable single-use items, so we have this really interesting opportunity now. There's these businesses, eco products, vegware, world centric. These are businesses that have created organic polymers. So you're talking about things that look and feel and behave a lot like plastic, but that are made out of soy, corn, sugar cane. These are the major ingredients to most of these products. And people are trying to come up with alternatives to plastic all the time. And there's a lot of different options out there. And there's also, obviously, as soon as there's a market for something, there are folks who are trying to, take advantage of that market in a bunch of different ways. Some are good actors, some are bad actors. And our way of distinguishing good from bad is going to be these certifications. That's the BPI certification, was the one you saw featured in that video. And that's the Biodegradable Product Institute, and they do lab testing of all products that they give that certification to. So the BPI certification means that this has been tested in a lab. This breaks down into, from a chemical level, it's not going to contribute any contamination. And we know that it's going to break down in a commercial composting setting. When it comes to the Compost Manufacturing Alliance, the CMA certification, that is a field test. So we know that it breaks down in field tests. So one is lab, one is field. These are the ones we trust. And we have a truth in labeling requirement in the state of Colorado, which means that every individual item that has this certification will have the stamp on the item. So this isn't something that should be on the external packaging. It's something on every single piece, so that when this material makes it to our facility, we can identify what is and isn't compostable. Now, this is not accepted in all composting arrangements. We are both a hauler and a processor, which means we have full control of the kind of supply chain of this material. We even sell these products. So from manufacturing to the market, to the use and collection, and then back to the process, we get to have eyes on it the whole time. And that is a really cool thing. It means that we can be really confident that what we're receiving can actually make it back into the earth. That's not true for all haulers. It's not true for all processors. We're one of the only facilities currently accepting BPI certified compostable items. If you're in Denver and you've got a municipal collection, they're not accepting this material. If you work with a larger hauler that's, taking their material to the Republic Services composting facility out in Bennett, they're not accepting this material. So you got to find the right people, and pardon me, not right people, but it just depends on the folks that you're working with. The folks that you're working with are going to dictate what you can and can't compost with them. And the haulers are going to make some rules. Those are the folks doing the collection, and the processors are going to make some rules, and they have a relationship to make sure that you know what can't and can't be put into your bins. All right. So now the question is, what can you do? I thought about taking this slide a couple different ways. We do talk about what Compost Colorado offers our membership. We have a commercial offering for folks, who run businesses in the Denver metro area. We can help you with your diversion. We can help you with signage. We can do trainings. We can help you with some waste auditing. There's all kinds of ways in which you can participate in these programs, and in which a company like Compost Colorado can help you do so. But I kind of gauged this particular study or this particular slide. I made it more about what it is that we've got that you can do as an individual. So you can partner with composters, or you can compost at home. There's obviously some things that you might not want to compost at home that we can take care of for you. You might not want to have bones and meats and cheeses sitting in your backyard because you're not interested in feeding, the raccoons or the coyotes or the foxes or whatever neighborhood friends you might have stopping by. There are some concerns around that. We can help you take care of that stuff that you might not want laying out in the backyard. And I'm happy to take questions on home composting. It's also a really fun and exciting thing to be doing. And there's some ways to make it really kind of user-friendly for you and your family. You can take care of your holiday and yard waste, trees, pumpkins, plants, garden debris. This is a massive amount of material that we're throwing away. And one of the saddest times of year is the fall, where we drive around and we see just how many people are putting all those leaves in those trash bags. And you can very easily forget how hard Mother Nature worked to produce those leaves, right? And how important it is to make sure that stuff has a chance to become leaves once again. So getting that stuff into a composting facility is a great opportunity. We have yard waste drop-offs for our members. We do yard waste collection curbside. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that. And Compost Colorado is a sustainability service. We are here to help you, your businesses, and your families live in a slightly better balance with nature. And we can do that and make it very, very easy. So whether that's a curbside program or a drop-off, we've got lots of options for everybody and anybody who's producing organic, unused material. You can also lay compost, lay it everywhere, lay it often, put it in your pockets, spread it as you walk around, top dress your yards, top dress your gardens, put it in your houseplants. You will notice it. What's fun about compost is if you put it in your houseplants, you're going to see them perk up. You're going to see them get greener. You're going to see them grow more leaves. The nutrients and the biology that are accessible inside those that material is going to make everybody around you happy, including the plants that you're hopefully putting a lot of love and moisture into. You're going to be able to water them less often. So there's lots of benefits. And then obviously you become an earth champion the moment you put any compost anywhere. You're sequestering carbon, you're making it more useful to living things, and you're preventing it from ending up in our atmosphere. So that's all gravy, all things we can get psyched about. You can also become an ambassador, so that you can do that with us, or you can do it with your neighbors. There's lots of ways to champion this essential practice. If you run a business, if you run, if you go to a church or you've got a coffee shop you frequent, we have an ambassador program that helps you engage in those places and get them interested and curious. You can host one of these presentations. We're doing this webinar now for Colorado Proud. You can bring this to your church. You can bring this to your business. You can bring this to your friends. Have me out for a wine and cheese event. I love wine and cheese. I've done those a few times. And it's a really great way to bring some folks together on something we can all get pretty psyched about. That is what we're trying to do. So we end this presentation with this slide, which kind of gives you an idea of what a circular economy might look like. We have a very linear economy, right? We make stuff, we use stuff, we throw stuff away. And that doesn't really allow for any regenerative practice. And it's one of the big symptoms of whatever sickness or whatever kind of disunity we have. That's a good representation of it. If we fixed this problem, we would be in pretty good shape long term. So it's one that I've been very passionate about over the past bunch of years, and one that I think is easy to get excited about. Let's make more circles, less lines, do collection, do, the way the system works, right? We collect food material, we take it to a facility, we turn it into a nutrient-rich, valuable compost soil amendment. We take that back to you, and at the same time, we deliver refillables and sustainable products and all kinds of amazing things that you can also purchase on our website to help you live the most sustainable lifestyle possible. I end these presentations with how we begin them. Composting is the easiest and most impactful thing you can do if you care about the future, if you care about trees and animals and plants. So we encourage you to explore, get more information, reach out to me, have these types of conversations. It turns your experience of interacting with your waste, which can be kind of like this, you're either apathetic at the trash can or a little bit guilty, right? That's kind of the two options you've got. It's like I either am not really thinking about this, or I'm feeling a little bit weird about the fact that I'm throwing something into a black hole trash bag. Or you can turn that experience into a really positive experience, into something that feels empowering, and yeah, makes you feel good. And that's what we're trying to make possible for everybody. So that's the presentation. That's what I got for the crew here. I appreciate you guys taking some time midday to learn a little bit more about compost. Thank you, thank you, the state of Colorado, and Colorado Proud for producing these platforms and giving us a chance to chat about this stuff. And so I'm happy to take a few questions, but sounds like we got some of them done throughout the presentation. Anything else? I'm happy.
I would like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
When you get such a diverse things that you collect,
Yep.
how do you regulate it so that it's the right mixture to compost well?
It's a great question. It is a challenge. So we compost, our facility focuses on particular feedstocks. We have a small site and we process about 30% of what we collect. And the 30% that we collect, we process our residential stream. And our residential stream is primarily food, right? So you think about kind of the law of averages has allowed us to kind of play with what it is that we actually get. And we collect in 5-gallon buckets. And those 5-gallon buckets are about 85% food and about 15% carbon, paper products, napkins. Occasionally we've got some BPI certified compostables, but it's about 85-15% is where we're at on the ratio there. And which means it's mostly food. And we have a recipe in which that material gets kind of compartmentalized, and then we use wood chips to add the carbon. So we get wood chips and yard debris from our members. We get wood chip drops from landscapers and all kinds of good stuff from them. And that means we're able to kind of really manage the recipe. So the recipe is about, I could take you through the whole process. It starts out at about 1 to 2. We have about twice as many wood chips as we do food debris. That's the carbons to nitrogen. And then we do some bulking after our first phase, and that produces basically a 3-to-1 ratio. So we have our own kind of MRF where we manage different feedstocks. So we've got food scraps in one area, we've got wood chips in one area. We do about 30 to 40 Starbucks around the Denver metro. So we've got a bunch of coffee grounds in one area. We even do some cannabis waste, which has its own benefits in the process. So all of this is kind of a buffet. And then our processor is building the actual batter, so to speak. If we were baking a cake, he's building the batter, and we have a recipe that he follows and adjusts as needed.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Great question.
Well, that's fascinating. Maybe just for myself and maybe anybody else, what does BPI stand for? I see it all the time, but what?
That's right. It's the Biodegradable Product Institute.
Okay.
Is what it stands for, and it's an organization that does the testing of this material.
Great. Thank you for that. Laurel, go ahead, please.
Ooh, got to go off mute, Laurel.
If you could unmute yourself, sorry.
How's that?
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having this presentation today. I think it's very interesting. I am the fertilizer program manager with the Colorado Department of Agriculture. And so part of what we regulate under the fertilizer program is compost, not the
Cool.
processing of the compost, but the final product.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was looking forward to hearing what you had to say today, Noah, and thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, Personally, I have been composting for a very long time. I live in Boulder County, and thankfully, they do have programs where there's a lot of residential pickup of household compostables, right?
Yeah.
So I have been using that option forever. And I tell you what, more compost leaves my house than trash.
Right.
Um, so I feel really, really good about that. And then part of that deal is then that I get to pick up the compost at the end of the season for free, and I can get a truckload of compost at the end of the season. It's a great program.
Yeah.
Um, and so we've considered actually composting at home. Um, and I was wondering if I could ask you about bokashi. I feel like, have you ever heard of the product called bokashi?
I have heard people talk about it. I'm not as familiar as I maybe could be, but maybe you want to tell me a little bit more about it.
Well, it was, I was working with a guy in the past, and we were trying to figure out what this actually does. I think that what it is a granular product, maybe in a substrate of something granular, and it contains a bunch of microbes that are intended to hasten the composting process.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that I would probably try that at home. But I thought I would ask you about that.
Yeah, I'm looking here. It's a fermentation process, so it's an anaerobic composting process. So
Oh,
that and there's going to be obviously some, it looks like, I mean, I obviously am just kind of looking into it in real time here, but it looks like there's going to be lots of different benefits to doing it that way, and I'd be curious to hear more about it.
oh, so it's anaerobic. Okay, well, that is good to know because I think that uh, my understanding of compost operations is that it does need to be aerobic, right? You need to turn the windrows over and things like that to keep it cooking.
It depends, right? So there are anaerobic processes that they build. So there's machines that can participate in anaerobic composting. Now you are going to produce generally some amount of methane or off-gassing that occurs due to the anaerobic state of the process. Like there are, and sometimes it's cool, right? There's these big anaerobic machines that are doing anaerobic composting and producing this kind of sludgy substrate material. And you're able to capture some of that methane that gets produced, and then you're using it as natural gas. So there's some places that are capturing that methane and then utilizing it. The material that gets produced at the end of some anaerobic processes is not always complete, and requires kind of additional time to mature and cure. It's one of the reasons why we don't really explore it. We want a complete process that's going to produce kind of efficiently as much compost as possible. But that's not to say that I mean, this looks really, really cool. And I'd be really curious to hear a little bit more about how that goes. So yeah, keep me posted.
Interesting. Yes, it does sound really interesting. And so, yeah, I'm aware of working with the Department of Ag, right? We are aware of some anaerobic methane producing places like around dairies and
Right.
feedlots, right? They are
Yep.
doing some anaerobic digestion of the manures, and they're producing a lot of methane they can sell back
That's
to
right.
the power grid, and then
Hmm.
have a remaining like a byproduct at the end of the process. Then that the Department of Agriculture actually registers and regulates, right? Because they can make perhaps a soil conditioner and sell that soil conditioner for a fertilizer. Um, as another monetary income, right, from
Yes.
that
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, and I'm looking here. this Bukashi looks like it again does similar to what I just mentioned. It's a pre-composting process that generally then needs to be added to a composting, a more substantial composting mass, or buried into the ground. So I think
Oh,
it helps you process the material. It probably helps it reduce quite a bit. So you're reducing the volume. The anaerobic process does a lot of that. And then you're able to then, add it or assimilate it into a broader composting kind of system, or bury it for it to finish the decomposition.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, and it seems like maybe that would make sense if I allow Neil to go ahead and do that in my backyard. I don't know.
I think it sounds cool. Yeah, I think and having it in a closed container allows you to do it without producing any smell, and then you bury it, and it seems like a good way of managing what might otherwise be attracting some visitors.
That makes a lot of sense. That really, really does. And it frustrates me so that, the company that does collect the materials from the households, they don't allow us to put in the, compostable food containers or single use things, or like the corn based
Right.
silverware,
That's right.
that. And it's frustrating to me. And so I'm really glad that you can collect that.
Yeah, definitely. It's tricky, and we sympathize with some of these other larger operations. It's tricky that those materials can be hard to manage. But we do have a drop off in Boulder. If you're interested in taking care of that stuff, you can look us up and find places to bring it.
I
If
think that I may just. I mean, that sounds like a plan. I didn't well, leave it to Boulder to have that sort of a service for sure. That's
Right.
excellent.
Yeah.
I did have one other question, Noah, if you've got a
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the final product. Once it is a finished compost, what do you do with all of that?
Yeah, so we, like many composters, offer a dividend or a rebate back to our members. So anybody who's signed up as a member can come and collect compost from us at no cost. So we do provide, last year we did 60 gallons, about 200 pounds of compost per person, which is great. We have a really fun event where people can come and collect compost from our facility at the National Western Center. And then you can also have it delivered for a discount. We'll just cover the cost of the delivery, but you receive that as part of your rebate. We gave away about, I would say, 200 cubic yards to our membership last year. And then we sell the rest of it. You can always go to our website and purchase compost from us. We do deliver it on a weekly basis, and you'll get scheduled and put on route. You lay out a tarp, and we will spread it for you, or we'll deliver it for you. And we're also planning some additional services that will do some top dressing or light application as well.
That makes so much sense. I just thank you so much. I think it really makes a big difference in this world that people are doing that, and that places like you, agencies, companies like yours are taking it upon yourselves to fix this, right? I think it's really an important thing. I think to make methane from manure for sure, and to feed the soils
Yes, that's
with
right.
our waste really makes sense. Do you know there's biosolids also?
That's right.
Composted biosolids are a huge. Gosh, the Metro Water Recovery something or other in Denver.
I'm sorry to break in, but I have to go, and I just wanted to say thank you, Noah. Thank you very much.
Of course, David.
thank
Thanks
you
for
for
joining.
joining.
Appreciate you.
Um, yes. So anyway, the biosolids are a big deal, and so I think it just makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to say thank you to you guys
Yeah,
for doing
thank
this.
you, Laura. I appreciate that, and it takes all of us to participate in this in some way. We're happy to provide the opportunity, and please continue to compost and continue to ask questions and get your neighbors involved. And if there's any way that Colorado can support any outreach or engagement, just let us know.
Thank you. I do have your contact information now. I
Perfect.
took a couple screenshots, so thanks a lot, Noah.
Awesome. Thanks,
I was
Laura.
just curious. As we wrap up, if somebody wanted to start composting, and Laurel brought up a good point, she has a resource that she can get rid of her stuff in Boulder. But if people want to do at home composting, what's the easiest way to get started?
Yeah, you can buy, it depends, right? I mean, how much space do you have?
Okay.
I would start with some very basic, um, I guess what I would say is you should get a delivery of wood chips. Start with wood
Okay.
chips. Get
Okay.
wood chips over to your yard, get a cubic yard or two. And then the three bin system is what we usually recommend. So if you have a way of building a few small bays, three small bays in your backyard, you don't need a lot of space to start. Obviously, the more material you add, the hotter it can be, the more complete the process, the faster the process will
Okay.
be. So start with a cubic yard or two of wood chips, have three bays in which you can kind of set up some composting, and then start to collect really basic, produce, fruits and vegetables. These
Okay.
are things that break down really easily. So as you prepare meals, start to collect that material. You can also use some cardboard. You're wanting, a 3-to-1 ratio of carbons to nitrogen. So your nitrogens are going to be your food material. Maybe steer away from meats, maybe steer away from bones, but anything that feels very porous, you can kind of start there. And then add 1 part nitrogens, which is your food material, to 2 to 3 parts carbon, and just mix that up. Mix that up in
Okay.
one of those bays, right? And then you want, depending on how wet the food material is, you want to wet this stuff up a little bit. Because remember, you're balancing 4 ingredients. That's it: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. That's all you need for this process. So your carbons are your wood chips, 3-to-1, 2.5 to 3-to-1. Your nitrogens are your food scraps. So get your food scraps in there. Um, and then the carbon will create structure as well. So some oxygen will actually maintain the better and get some nice chunky wood chips, not pencil shavings, but like wood chips. And mix that up, water it a little bit, make sure it stays moist, and then maybe put another layer of wood chips on top of it to try and insulate it, and let that sit for a while. And then after 3-4 weeks, go ahead and give it a turn and start to see what that material looks like. And you can move after 3 to 4 weeks that pile that you started in bay one, move it to bay two, right? And now you've opened up bay one, and now you're able to kind of build another pile, right? And then every 3 to 4 weeks, you can give it another turn into the next pile. And if you're making sure that there's enough moisture, so checking to see that there's enough moisture, you want 50% moisture. There's some ways that you can test moisture. If you can pick up the material with a glove and squeeze it, you want it to clump, right? That's one of the ways that you can do that. You want it to clump slightly and maybe even bead a little bit of moisture. You don't want it drenching you when you squeeze it, but you want a little bit of moisture coming out. Once it's got the right amount of moisture, it's got some oxygen, you're mixing it up, that stuff should break down. Try and get some good nitrogen in there, so that the microbiology has access to that nutrient. They need it. So not just wood chips, but definitely a healthy amount of the carbons or the nitrogens, and make sure that you got a big enough kind of critical mass that you can really get some good fire going in there.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that'll do. Well,
Oh, thank you so much. Wow, very interesting. And I'm hoping, our members do download our webinars. So I'm hoping they reach out to you. Maybe they've been looking for an opportunity to find an outlet, right, for some of their stuff. So I'm hoping.
yeah, please do. And if there's any way for us to engage with the membership, sending a recap email,
You bet.
I would love to do that. Your kind of audience is a really good one for us to be engaging with. So let us know. And Laurel, if there's any more conversations about what you guys have going on at the in your agency, we are always looking for some creative collaboration. We want to encourage municipalities around the metro area to be purchasing, because the end market of this product is a big part of what can make these businesses viable. So figuring out how we can facilitate and get connections to folks who are interested in purchasing this stuff is a huge challenge. And when we can, participate in some advocacy around municipal buyback requirements. You know, if you're going to be a government agency and you're going to have to lay compost, try and buy it from your local producer, as opposed to importing it from who knows where, right? That is a big part of what happens with fertilizers and things.
Yes.
So just my little pitch there. Okay.
No,
all right.
we would love to collaborate on some things. So thank you so much. And Laurel, thanks for such great engagement and sharing what you're doing, because it's always cool to learn what other folks are doing at CDA. So
right. That's right.
Well, wonderful.
Meeting with you sometime, Barb. Maybe I can meet you down at headquarters sometime. And
definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
cool.
Wonderful. Our next webinar is going to be in August, and we're going to be talking with a company, Stock and Sprout. They have developed a new platform to help food producers, farmers, ranchers, etc., connect with food consumers. And it's fascinating. And we will be doing a live demo on that webinar. So look for that in our Colorado Proud newsletter. And Noah, we can't thank you enough. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks, guys.